Warriors Don't Cry, Chapter 14, page 157. The first school days of the new year were frightening because without Minnie Jean, we realized anyone or all of us could be next. Posters and cards reading 1 down and 8 to go were everywhere. Segregists left no doubt that they were seizing Minnie Jean's suspension as an opportunity to fire up their campaign. Once we got back into our daily routine, it was evident that segregationists must have spent their holiday thinking up ways to make us miserable. I could feel their electrifying hope of victory all around me. They walked differently, they talked differently, and didn't hesitate to shower us with angry words or deeds, letting us know we were short-timers. I had by then withdrawn from French class because I wasn't able to concentrate with the combined pressure of the extremely hostile students and coping with everything else. I was also concerned that I couldn't do my best in my English, shorthand, and typing classes, all of which would have been a breeze under any other circumstances. Even before lunch on our first day back, we had all begun to experience a hell that would not have imagined. The rumor was that the White Citizens Council would pay reward money to the person who could incite us to misbehave and get ourselves expelled. It was apparent that many students were going for that reward. On Monday, January 6th, Minnie Jean and her parents met with Superintendent Blossom. She was allowed to return to school Monday, January 13th, with the provision that she not respond to her attackers in any way. A short time after Minnie Jean's return, a boy doused her with what appeared to be a bucket of soap. She froze in her tracks and did not respond, even as the greasy liquid trickled down her chest and horror-painted face. Afterward, a group of perhaps 50 students gathered outside the principal's office to shout cheers for the douser, saying he had paid her back. He was suspended, but we were frightened that he had set in motion an all-out soap war that would lead to the drenching of each one of us and guaranteed a real brawl if we tried to fight back. The segregationists were becoming even more vocal, urging the students to harass us at every opportunity. The Central High Mothers League announced a nighttime rally with the Reverend Wesley Pruden, president of the Citizens Council, speaking on what race mixers are planning for us. They issued a special invitation to Central High students. We heard that almost 200 hardcore segregationist students protested our presence by being absent from school on the day of the rally. The segregationists organized a systematic process for phoning our homes at all hours of the night to harass us. They also phoned our parents at their places of work and other relatives or friends they could annoy. One day, Terrence's mother rushed into the principal's office, having been called and told her son was seriously injured, only to find that the call had been a hoax. Repeated bomb threats were telephoned to our homes. We had real evidence that the school officials weren't certain of their ability to protect us, when on the day of a pep rally, Mrs. Huckabee suggested that Thelma, Minnie Jean, Elizabeth, and I sit in her office rather than be exposed to the hostility and physical abuse that certainly awaited us. We were having more frequent meetings with Mr. Bates and other NAACP officials about our problems. Despite our conversations and all the public declarations that school officials could protect us, the truth was, things were getting worse by the moment. As determined as everyone else was to have me remain at Central, with each passing day I began to doubt I was strong enough to tough it out. Even as I watched the others weaken, I could feel myself growing weary and nervous. When I had a long period of time alone on a Saturday, I leafed through the pages of my diary. I had not been fully aware of how deeply the turmoil at school was affecting me. I was stunned to see what I had written. I wish I were dead. That was the entry for several days running in late January. God, please let me be dead until the end of the year. I was willing to bargain and plead with God. I revised my request. I just wanted to become invincible for a month or two. I clutched the diary to my chest and wept for a long time. No, I whispered aloud. I do not wish I were dead. Then all the pain and hurt would be over. I fell to my knees and prayed about it. That's when I knew I should go and talk to Grandma India. I told her about my wish to be dead. Good idea, she said. She didn't even look up at me as though she were alarmed after I whimpered out my confession. Instead, she continued dusting the dining room table. My feelings were hurt, and then she looked me in the eyes and said it again. Good idea. How did you plan going about it? Ma'am? I wasn't certain I heard her. I said, I wish I were dead. Did you hear me? And I said, good idea. Her voice was louder as she peered at me with a mischievous expression. The sooner you get started, the sooner you'll make the segregationists real happy. They'll love broadcasting the headlines across the world. She braced the palm of one hand on the table to balance herself as she paused for a long moment to think. I've got it. The headlines will read, Little Rock heroine gives in to segregationists, kills herself. What do you mean? I gasped. I felt really angry that she talked as though she didn't care. She kept on creating new headlines about my death. Or maybe they could write, Melba Patillo died by her own hand because she was afraid of facing God's assignment for her. Oh, no, ma'am. I slumped down into my chair. She wouldn't let up. Then, of course, there would be the celebration all the segregationists would plan. Let's see now. I'll bet they would rent the Robinsons' auditorium for their party. It would be kind of like the wrestling matches, loud with all the cheering, singing, and dancing. She looked back down at the scratches on the table and continued dusting. So do as you please, but I'd also think about the moment at which you have to face the Lord and explain your decision to Him. She ignored me, humming her hymn, I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. I stood there for a moment watching her. That did it. I realized dying wasn't a good idea. I was almost certain God wouldn't allow people to die for only a short while and come back. After that, Grandma arranged for a daily time when I had to come to her room, get down on my knees, and pray with her. Then she and I would talk about what was troubling me and what I would like. We would play Yahtzee or read pages from some fun novel I would choose. Sometimes we'd read through the newspaper together, but only the good things, like the launching of the American satellite into orbit that circled the Earth in 116 minutes. During those days, I felt so close to her. I knew I had been silly for wanting to give up. Several times she looked at me and said, Don't you know, child, how much I love you, how much your mama loves you? Whenever you think about going away from this earth, think about how you'd break my heart and your mother, your brothers. You might as well take your mother with you because she'd be beside herself. She made me get a project I really liked and encouraged me to keep on top of it. I chose the Blast Off the Explorer, the satellite that put our country into space race. I had always been interested in rockets and space. Once I had run to the Strategic Air Command base in a nearby town to see if they would allow me to become a pilot. Grandma studied up on the topic, and we talked for hours while she taught me how to do the quilting for Mother's birthday present. Meanwhile, Mother Lois urged me to give Vince a standing invitation to Sunday dinner. I couldn't understand why she was being so nice. I think Grandma talked to her about our conversation, and she was trying to cheer me up. Sometimes Vince came even when I didn't really want him to. There are times when I just wanted to stay in my room and think because I had no energy or desire to do anything else. Everything in me was devoted to being a full-time warrior. When I wasn't actually on the battlefield surviving, I was thinking about how to do it, or worried I wouldn't be able to make it. Every day, Grandma and I prayed hard for Minnie Jean to have strength and peace of mind, and for all of us to be able to feel God's love for us, even in the face of those who spewed so much hatred our way. For the second time on Thursday, February 6th, Minnie Jean was attacked by the boy who dumped soup on her. During the ruckus that followed, there was a great deal of confusion. The identity of who attacked and who fought back was not clear. Her attackers accused her of retaliation. White trash were the words they reported her to have said. In addition, they accused her of throwing a purse at a girl. When she was sent home without receiving a suspension notice, I breathed a sigh of relief. But at the end of the day, Mrs. Huckabee gave Carlotta a sealed envelope to be delivered to Minnie Jean. They bother you all the time, ousted Negro student contends. Arkansas Democrat, Thursday, February 13th, 1958. In the article that followed, Minnie Jean explained the pressure she had been under at school. She said she had only had half a white friend at Central, a two-faced girl who ran hot and cold. Of the other students, she said, they throw rocks, they spill ink on your clothes, and they call you N. They bother you every minute. I cried for an hour when word came that the envelope sent to Minnie Jean was a suspension notice. I was devastated when Superintendent Blossom said he would recommend her expulsion. But when the NAACP and her parents announced they would push to have a hearing, I kept a glimmer of hope. I read in the newspaper that Thurgood Marshall said he didn't know how much more unpleasant treatment we could take at Central High. That night, I wrote in my diary, I sometimes wish I could change myself into a psychiatrist to determine what makes me such a hated member of this school. Can they really be treating me this way simply because I'm brown? That's all. Oh, no, no, I heard myself shout as I was walking up the 14th Street stairwell one morning. It wasn't yet 8:40, and I was already the victim of a dousing with raw eggs from someone standing on the stairs above my head. The odor bothered me, but even more, It was the feel of that slimy substance oozing very slowly through my hair and onto my face, while at the same time raw eggs slithered over the sweater Aunt May Dale had given me for Christmas. The end come down to have breakfast. I can tell she's wearing eggs. The one boy called. I never said a word back to the group, hovering with their ugly cat calls. I knew they were just hoping I'd do or say something that would result in my expulsion. I backed down the stairs and out the door to go home. Well, this egg is wonderful for putting moisture in the hair, Grandma said. Some people use it for that, you know. Maybe we ought to start it on a regular basis. She was trying to wipe out as much as she could. Then I would have to bathe and wash my hair. Hold still, she continued. After a nice long bath, you can hurry back to school, and this will have been just a refreshing break in your morning. I've never been so embarrassed. Oh, I bet there will been times in there, be more. Embarrassment is not a life-threatening problem. It can be washed away with a prayer and a smile, just like this egg is washed away with a little water. I know, but it's the same way I feel when they spit on me. I feel like they've taken away my dignity. Dignity is a state of mind, just like freedom. These are both precious gifts from God that no one can take away unless you allow them to. As Grandma spoke, she motioned me to turn my head to the other side. You could take charge of these mind games, you know. How do you mean? Take, for example, this egg in your hair. Suppose you'd have told the boy who did this, thank you, with a smile. Then you've changed the rules of the game. What they want is for you to be unhappy. That's how they get pleasure. Yeah, but that would be letting them win. Not exactly. Maybe it would defeat their purpose. They win when you respond the way they expect you to. Change the rules of the game, girl, and they might not like it so much. They'd think I was crazy. They'd think you were no longer their victim. For the rest of the morning as I walked the halls amid my hecklers, I couldn't stop thinking about what it would be like to feel as though I were in charge of myself. I always believed Grandma India had the right answer, so I decided to take her advice. As I tried to open a classroom door, two boys pushed it closed. At first I tried to pull it open, but then I remembered changing the rules of the game. I stood up straight, smiled politely, and said in a friendly voice, "Thank you, I've been needing exercise. You've done wonders for my arm muscles." I chatted on as if they were my friends. They looked at me as though I were totally nuts. Then they let go of the door. I felt great power surging up my spine like electricity. I left them standing there looking at each other. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, it snowed. That afternoon, as I stood in the snow waiting for a ride, we were attacked with snowballs filled with rocks. Mr. Eckford, Elizabeth's father, bolted from the car to rescue us, but he too was bombarded. Little Rock's finest police officers and members of the Federalized National Guard stood by, watching with their arms folded as we were hit time after time. Even when we pleaded for their assistance, they did nothing. When I arrived home, Grandma handed me a large, oddly shaped envelope. I suspect it's a special greeting from that young man you ignore most of the time. After all, it is a special day. I took the envelope to my room to open. It was a card from Vince. As I read the beautiful words, I was sad that I couldn't talk to him on the phone or see him more. But for the life of me, I couldn't fit him into my schedule. Even my daydreams about him were beginning to fade because integration was taking up all the space in my mind. 3 CHS pupils suspended. Minnie Jean Brown expelled. Arkansas Gazette, Tuesday, February 18th, 1958. Minnie Jean was expelled after a 40-minute hearing. The official announcement of her expulsion was a devastating defeat for us. The fact that the school board at the same time suspended 3 white pupils, 2 for wearing 1 down 8 to go cards and 1 for pushing Gloria down a flight of stairs, didn't lessen the blow. The NAACP had counted on getting Minnie Jean's expulsion reversed, but Blossom and the school board were adamant in sticking to their conclusion despite all the pressure on them. National NAACP officials arranged for Minnie Jean to have a scholarship to a famous private New York high school called New Lincoln. She would live with the family of a renowned psychologist, Dr. Kenneth Clark. I had read that it was his research that had supported Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP legal suit that resulted in the 1954 Supreme Court decision to integrate the schools. It was a fabulous opportunity for her, but all I could think about was how far New York was from Little Rock. We would no longer be able to get together to have our usual talks. At the same time, I tried not to be jealous that Minnie Jean would be escaping the hell that was my daily life. Still, I found myself daydreaming about what it would be like to get on that airplane with her and go to a place where there was no central high school, no segregationist, no pain stinging my heart every time someone called me an N. Late one afternoon, a few days before Minnie Jean was to leave, I sat on the side of her bed, watching her pack. The two of us were talking and giggling. Again, I was overwhelmed with those mixed feelings. I had desperately wanted her to stay, and at the same time, I would have given anything to go with her. She was showing me her wardrobe, gifts from friends to help her adjust to her new life. They were the most beautiful clothes I'd ever seen. Angora sweaters in deep autumn shades of rust and green, with matching corduroy skirts, a few of those wonderful fuzzy collars everyone was wearing, a velvet blazer, and even a beautiful trench coat. I was so sad I could barely speak, but I was pretending everything was all right and that I was happy for her. What I really wanted to say was that I miss you already. I love you like a sister. I don't know what I'll do without you. But that would sound too mushy, so I kept my thoughts to myself. Suddenly, she slumped down onto the bed amid all those beautiful clothes and her new luggage and started to cry uncontrollably. I'm really sorry all this is happening. It's going to make it harder for the rest of you. I tried to console her. It's not your fault, Minnie Jean. I'll miss you, she embraced me. I'll miss riding home with you and playing records with you and yeah, but look at where you're going. New Lincoln High School is a famous place. Those are rich people you're staying with. I'll bet you'll get your own phone and maybe even a car. You'll meet important people. Do you forgive me? There's nothing to forgive. But for the grace of God, it might have been any one of us. To distract myself from the tears welling up inside me, I began folding things to put in her suitcase. If you don't pack, I get to keep all these gorgeous things and get away, and you'll have to stay here in my place, I teased. With the announcement that Minnie Jean was definitely out, the segregationists went wild. The signs on the wall said, "All go north." An article in the newspaper announced that hall patrols by Federalized National Guardsmen would be eliminated, although they would remain in the building and make periodic checks. That announcement granted segregationists more permission to have a field day with us. The school days that followed were noted in my diary in terms of the particular indignities I suffered. Putting every detail down in the paper would give God a chance to see for himself what was going on, I thought. February 18th, 1958. A red-haired, freckled-faced girl, the one who taunts me in homeroom, keeps trailing me in the hallways between classes. Today she spit on me, then slapped me. Later in the day, as I came around a corner, she tripped me so that I fell down a flight of stairs. I picked myself up to face a group of boys who had chased me up the stairs. When I told school officials about it, he said she was from a good family and would never do such a thing, and I needed a teacher to witness these incidents if it were going to take any action. He asked me what did I expect when I came to a place where I knew I wasn't welcome. He warned me to keep Minnie Jean's expulsion in mind. February 19th. Andy again. He's really beginning to frighten me. As I emerged from the cafeteria today, he walked right up, face to face, stepping on my toes so I couldn't move for a long moment. He shoved me backwards and then held a wrench up to my face. He waved it around and shouted all sorts of threats that he could do a lot of awful things to my face with it. My knees were shaking and I didn't know what to do. I said, "Thank you." His eyes grew huge. Quicker than the speed of light, I jumped away from him and ran. "Just think all night about what I'm going to do tomorrow," he shouted after me. February 20th. I got hit across the back with a tennis racket. I managed to smile and say thank you. Andy said, "What did you say?" I repeated, "Thank you very much." I spit up blood in the restroom. I felt as though someone had stuck a hot poker through my back into my insides. I saw him several times during the afternoon, but I never let him see me cry, and I didn't report it to anybody. I think only the warrior exists in me now. Melville went away to hide. She was too frightened to stay here. By the beginning of March, I had sunk into the state of mind you get into when you know you have to take castor oil and there's no way out. I just did what had to be done without discussing it or thinking about it. I would get up, polish my saddle shoes, bathe, get dressed, dump my bowl of oatmeal into the toilet so Grandma India would think I'd eaten it, but my nervous stomach wouldn't have to eject it and go to the war inside that school. I listened to shouts, to ugly names, while I smiled and said thank you. I waited for a ride, came home, did homework, got to bed, and started over again the next day. I felt kind of numb, as though nothing mattered anymore. I thought my routine must have been like a soldier's fighting in wartime. Only I was lucky enough to have weekends in another world. One day, I was doing just that, thinking about my other world and about the headline I had seen that read, "It's lovely," says Minnie Jean of her New York school. What would it be like to have just one lovely day of school amid pleasant people who smiled when you looked them in the eye? As I stood alone outside the 16th Street entrance of Central High, I was shivering against that cold, waiting for my ride home that Friday afternoon. I was immersed in fantasies about my quiet, safe weekend. My body was there, but my mind was somewhere else. My 101st guard, Danny, had said, "When you let yourself lose your focus, you make a big mistakes." I suddenly realized that I had done just that, made a foolish mistake. The 16th Street entrance was one of the most dangerous areas of Central High's grounds. Suddenly there was a voice in the distance, calling my name, jolting me from my thoughts. "It's Melba!" It was Andy's voice shouting at me. My heart started beating fast. He was more than a block away, coming up from the playing field with a group of his friends. They were walking fast, almost galloping. Even if I had started running, I couldn't outdistance all of them. I looked around frantically, searching for help. "Hey, Melba, you gotta get out of here." The second voice was much closer. I wasn't alone. There was a sleek, muscular boy about 6 feet tall, wearing a varsity jacket and a cap, with a bushy shock of blonde curls peeking from beneath it. He was leaning against the passenger side of a 1949 Chevy, parked at the curb, only a few feet to my left. Was he one of Andy's friends who'd come to corner me and hold me there? His face looked familiar to me. He resembled one of those big, tough boys who got their kicks taunting me. But why wasn't he coming towards me, shouting ugly words like the others? "On the wall, who's the deadest of them all?" Andy shouted as he hesitated, waiting for his friends. Now they were only about a quarter of a block away. "Stand still. Don't run, 'cause if you do, it'll be worse for you," Andy shouted. What now? My mind scrambled to figure out what I should do. "Melba," the blonde boy whispered my name. "Listen to me. I'm going to call you, and loud. I'm going to curse at you, but I'm going to put my keys on this trunk of this car. Get out of here now. My name is Link. I'll call you later." "But I can't do that." "Get the hell out of here, Andy's going to kill you." "But I can't. I stood there gasping for words. He's up to something, I thought. Now I'm surrounded. Why doesn't the carpool driver come after me now? Right now, please, God. "You don't have any choice," he whispered. "Go." I turned to see that Andy and his friends were only a short distance away. I wasn't even sure I could make it to the car. "If you don't get out of here, you're going to get us both killed," the blonde boy urged. "Hey, Andy, we're going to have us some tonight." I heard Link shout as he walked away from the car toward them. I grabbed the keys and ran around quickly to open the door on the driver's side. I hopped in, locked all the doors. By the time I turned the key in the engine, Andy was clawing at the lock, while the other boys popped off the windshield wipers and tried to get into the passenger side. Link stood glaring at me with anxious look on his face, spewing hate words just like them. I pressed down the clutch, shifted into first gear, and the car jumped forward. Andy was still running alongside, holding on to the door handle. But as I sped up, he had to let go. Even if that boy Link got me later for stealing his car, I was alive and on my way for now. After a couple blocks, when I could breathe a little easier, I craned to look around. I couldn't see anybody following me. "Thank you, God," I whispered as I headed home. "Thank you for saving me one more time."